On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 2008. We're going to be taking a look at Celine Dion, and she's going to be performing All By Myself. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, this particular video was another request to see if Celine Dion has been pitch corrected. And I mean, those words should never be in the same sentence, Celine Dion and pitch correction, given the fact that Celine's voice is one that I know really well because she's just a huge voice, just full stop, around the world, but especially here in the UK. And when I was growing up, her voice was ever present and she was always in the charts. So, looking into this, again, I mean, we're just going to jump into this and I'll let it play through. I've isolated her vocal, run it through the pitch monitoring software. So, let's have a listen and see how Celine gets on.
When I was young, I never needed anyone. Making love was just for fun. Those days are gone.
I'm just going to jump in here and I'm going to have to try and control myself because this is one of those situations that I put in the same bracket really as the analysis that we did on Freddie Mercury's voice when they pitch corrected his voice. And that was from a performance in the late 70s. And there are certain voices that you don't pitch correct because they weren't wrong in the first place. When I hear this kind of thing going on, I mean, with great singers, this is the problem, that this vocal, I guarantee you, by Celine live, was amazing. We're not getting to hear it here because we're hearing the pitch correction after it's been applied. And you'll be able to tell at the end of this performance, she gets a standing ovation because it was amazing. But we're not getting to hear what it was like on the night. Anyway, listening to this isolated vocal,
when I was young,
you can just hear how it's been stuck to the B3 here. And that's not Celine's voice. She doesn't sing on these lines. Nobody does. I should say nobody does. Nobody does naturally. Only people who have been pitch corrected are doing this kind of thing and hitting the lines all the time. And later on in this video, I'll show you another performance of Celine's, which was live and unedited. It's actually back in 1997. So it's before all of this stuff started to take over. And you'll be able to see where her voice actually lands live rather than this. But because I've been asked to look at this video, we'll continue on with this.
Making love was just for fun. Those days are gone.
Especially that, the G3, it's almost like you can hear where the note shouldn't be, but because it's got to be on that line, it's just been transported there mechanically and by a computer process, and you could hear that going on. The other thing that artistically, I actually find it quite offensive that somebody has thought her performance wasn't good enough. So I'm going to improve it, or I'm going to apply pitch correction because Celine's voice is not good enough. I can make it better. And I'm talking about the person who's producing this, who's applying the pitch correction. They have thought that Celine's voice isn't good enough as it is. So she's got to be helped to get onto these lines. So yeah, I mean, if I was Celine, I would be massively offended by that and say to your sound team or to your producer, you think that I can't sing this song well enough, so you're now applying something to my voice, probably without her permission, to make it what they consider better. It doesn't sound better. We can hear. And I know Celine's voice very well. This is not Celine Dion's voice. It's like an AI computer version of her voice.
Living alone, I think of all the friends I've known. But when I dial the telephone, nobody.
I mean, we get one note here that has been allowed through.
Is home.
And actually, this kind of thing, we actually got one here ever so slightly. You'll find that Celine's voice does this because it is so expressive. She does go between notes because that's where the expression is. But sadly, in this performance, it's just been absolutely butchered.
Oh,
I mean, again, you can't help but think of TalkBox. When you play a keyboard with a tube in your mouth and it blows the sound of the keyboard into your mouth and then it goes into the microphone, it sounds like a computer voice. That's exactly what those notes sound like. When you have notes that happen one after the next simultaneously, it sounds too accurate. And yeah, the fact that it's too accurate makes it sound unnatural because of that A4 just followed by the D4 instantly, I mean perfectly, to literally a variation of 0 cents.
don't want to be oh,
And what gets me is that they are doing this in the production studio, that nobody's hearing that. Even somebody who happens to be in the studio at the time and gone, oh, excuse me, mate, stop. You've applied it there to 2 notes simultaneously and you've done it really heavily. Maybe just do it to one of the notes and allow the other one to be okay. But then somebody's said, no, we're going to do it on every single note because Celine Dion can't hit pitches accurately. So we need to make sure that she's now hitting the notes. I don't know who was thinking this about Celine Dion's voice.
anymore. Hard to be sure. Sometimes I feel so insecure. A love so distant and obscure remains the cure.
So all of the bits of expression we actually get where Celine is sometimes not even hitting a note. She's just, expelling air into the microphone and shaping words with her mouth so that you understand what she's saying. As soon as she holds on a note, there's the pitch correction. The little shouts, at least, have been left.
Oh, baby, don't wanna be, oh, baby.
Right, well, I think what we'll do is we'll move into the other performance because this kind of thing of looking at the best singers of all time, of which, ironically, Celine Dion is, I would say, if this were another singer, I would say singers like Celine Dion never hit the notes like this, a D4 on the line, A4 on the line, D4 on the line, and then in the next vocal phrase, D4 on the line, A4 on the line. It never happens. There's always a variation, especially between different sections from, the beginning of the chorus to the middle of the chorus to the end of the chorus, but we're getting this the whole time. We're getting stuck to the lines. And I know that this performance has had millions of views. I mean, it might be one of the most watched or viewed on YouTube, one of her most watched videos, which is crazy to think that people are listening to her voice that isn't actually her voice. But obviously people don't know it's happening. This is the rabbit hole that we've gone down now, that great singers are being pitch corrected. So yeah, I don't know why this is happening, because maybe so many of the new singers who can't hit pitches are being pitch corrected. So then the record labels who don't have musical ears, they think, oh, this singer is perfectly on these lines, so all of our singers have got to be on these lines. Not only that, The singers who were around before pitch correction was even being applied, we now have to go back and pitch correct their voices so that they're perfectly on lines as well. But as you guys know, I like to be as thorough as possible within the constraints of the one day that I have to make each video. So what I've done is taken Celine's vocal from 1997, same song, live performance, but this is without pitch correction. Like I said, it's before all of that started to get applied just to everything. So the natural vocal is on the right hand side. The pitch corrected vocal that we've just listened to is going to be on the left. The audio we're going to be hearing is from the live performance back in 1997, Celine's voice as it is. So let's have a listen.
When I was young, never needed anyone.
So, I mean, from a production standpoint, the first thing you'd say is that Celine has a lot of reverb on her voice. She does in that previous performance, or the more recent pitch-corrected performance, but this has a bit more on there. But when I say about pitch correction and a natural vocal being night and day, the way that I'm hearing them, hopefully you can see what I hear. That on the left-hand side, this is the pitch correction. It's being stuck to the B3. And look at the B3 here. So look at the difference between the lines that we have. This is obviously stuck. This is going all over the place. And you know, some of that is the reverb, but it's Celine's voice is not being stuck to a line. It can go where it actually went, where it actually is going in this live performance, because it is unedited. Let's have a listen on.
Making love is just for fun.
Again, look at the way the Celine is sharp of the B3. Not that you can hear this. This is the point, that pitch correction is correcting a vocal where you can't hear any flaws. And that is the flaw in pitch correction, or I should say it's the flaw in the ear of the producer who's listening to it. They would have taken a note that was ever so slightly sharp and still sounded great and put it onto this line, therefore making it sound fake and false.
Those days are gone.
And even with that, those days here is on the G3, bang on. Here again, it's sharp. And it's not just a tiny bit sharp by, 1 cent, 2 cents, 5 cents. It's probably, 10, 15, maybe 20 cents sharp. But it's because it's the emotion that Celine is expressing at that time. You can't express emotion on these lines, because then you do sound like a robot.
Living alone.
And again, really cool slide up here. And look at the way, this is really accurate pitch-wise for a vocalist at any level. The way that she's just ever so slightly above the line, vibrato's above the line as well. But again, pitch correction has put her on the line. But the best note isn't on the line. And we can tell with this performance on the right-hand side that she is singing the best note. It doesn't sound mechanical. It just sounds great, because she's hitting the best frequency to resonate with all of the other instruments. But let's listen on.
I think of all the friends I've known, but when I died, the telephone.
Nothing about that phrase sounded off. She was bang on the B3 here, and then, according to pitch correction, she totally missed the G sharp 3, and then she was sharp of the A3. So you would say technically for 440 hertz, that whole second section was wrong. It was out. Have a listen to it again and see if this sounds wrong to your ear.
But when I died, the telephone.
Telephone. She even does a little bit of an extemporization there that technically you would say is flat because it didn't reach the line. And then this is actually where they did allow this little bit of expression through on that previous phrase, which stands out, and I pointed it out when it happened, because it is so rare, unfortunately, in this other performance that we listened to before, for any of these notes to get through. But let me just run it on a little bit. And this is the thing, when you start looking at her voice, I mean, we'll have a listen to this. Not that it's going to sound like between notes, but when we're looking at it, we know that it is.
Nobody's home. Oh, by myself. Don't wanna.
And really good example here. Sounds great. We are sharp of the D4, but that's just the best place to hit, the best frequency. But that D4 in the other performance has been snapped to the line. So this is the kind of variation that you get. And again, try to take in that we're listening to Celine Dion here, one of the most accurate singers you will ever hear, and she's not singing on these lines. And this is why in all the other videos, for people that don't really understand this, they say, oh, maybe the singer that you're looking at is just that good that they hit the lines all the time. Celine is an example of a voice where she just sounds pitch perfect the whole time, and being pitch perfect means she's singing the best frequency. She's not on these lines. This is 440 hertz. And Celine is proving that her voice doesn't do this. So we've got a direct comparison from her pitch-corrected computer version of her voice to the natural voice that's been unedited. Again, how good did that sound on the B4? And the A4 over here, I mean, we're slightly behind. There's a difference in tempos here. So that's why it's running a little bit out of sync. But this B4... sounded great, and here ever so slightly sharp of the A4, which has now just been squashed to a line over there.
Anymore.
And again, look, I don't know whether you can see at the bottom here, perfectly between notes there.
Oh, by myself. Don't want to live. Oh, by
And just to point out that this occurrence that we're having quite regularly, in fact, of Celine being slightly sharp of the note, that is her voice. She's not trying to sing, 5 cents sharp of every note tuned to 440 hertz. This is just inherent in her voice, her vocal cords. This is how her voice works. This is how we know, along with her tone, that it's Celine Dion singing. So, when you start taking this kind of thing out, you are effectively taking away somebody's identity as a singer, because this isn't done consciously. These are just tiny little details, subconscious things that happens within her voice that just makes it great to listen to. And more often than not, these really subtle things that happen make their voices even more relatable, and they connect even more because there's an ever so slight angst to being sharp, and that's what we pick up on emotionally as humans. So when you start taking out the expression of that particular singer's voice, that's why it'll sound fake as well, and it sounds like it's not really them telling the story anymore. It's amazing to see how regularly she is sharp, and then what the pitch correction actually does on the left-hand side. And I'm going to jump in there at that split second, because within the last, 2 seconds of audio, we've got the physical representation of why pitch correction doesn't work and makes a singer sound worse. Because here, this wasn't a voice, this was an instrument. Let me take this back. Listen again. You can clearly hear that's not Celine. And, I mean, we know it's an instrument because of the tuning. First of all, the G-sharp 4, absolutely dead on the line. But look at the A4. The instrumentation is flat. That particular note that now takes over in the mix is flat of the A4. So it means that Celine is going to be singing a note in relation to this, the note that she can hear. Bringing in pitch correction, what's happening? Celine Dion is hitting a note slightly flat of the A4 to match this instrument that is flat. The backing is slightly flat for that particular note that is now cutting through the mix. So when you take somebody's live, unedited performance and now you pitch correct it, you have literally made Celine Dion's voice now wrong. She is now incorrect with the backing, because the backing, the note that she's supposed to be singing along to in relation to, is flat. And this is the problem, that by pitch correcting a vocal, you are now making it irrelevant to all of the instruments that might be slightly sharp, might be slightly flat, and this is why it sticks out. So this is, unfortunately, the visual representation of why pitch correction doesn't work, because great singers sing to what they can hear. They don't sing to think, right, where's 440 hertz? Let me try and hit that note and ignore all of the instrumentation that I'm singing along with. That's not the way singing works. That's not the way great artists work. They just work with the frequencies they can hear. But anyway, thank you guys for requesting the previous video for me to take a look at, and I hope you have enjoyed this video, even though it's one of those that's a bit depressing to think of great singers' voices now not being what they were when people were watching them live, but also going back historically through performances that didn't have pitch correction because it didn't exist at that point in time, but now they're going back and applying it to people's performances. Yeah, now who knows where it will end, but as always, keep the suggestions and requests coming in the comment section below for future videos. Let me know what you guys think, and if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!